Good morning, all. If I don't start getting up earlier, we're just going to start all these coffees with Max's models instead of morning. It's getting late. I was up working on the computer late last night, but I did manage to get the video posted. Yay! And thanks to John for that wonderful background. We could have talked slot cars for 2 hours without any problems. And we barely got to scratch the surface, but it amazed me how much he knew right off the top of his head. And after we were off camera, he was showing me some of the books in his library. He's got a genuine insight, not just of slot cars, but race cars and everything else. But that was one of the most informed people I've had the joy of speaking to in a while, and that was just a lot of fun. For anybody interesting, it appears that the computer had a lot of the program stuff in the C drive. It just got packed full of old garbage files and everything. And once I gutted the system and got rid of a lot of old stuff, which got rid of a lot of old compiled stuff and did a whole bunch of other things, it came one step from completely reinstalling the program. Then it was able to start working pretty much normally, still kind of slow. I may yet reinstall it. That C drive, where you have a partition of C and a D drive. That C drive is where all the programs are stored, and the D drive is where I put all my memory. But it keeps making copies of crap that you don't need, and finally, I dumped all the temp files. Anyway, enough of the IT stuff. So I did some other things too, but I won't bore you with it. But so great news! I heard from the guys over at Atlantis, and they hadn't forgotten about doing an interview, another Zoom type interview. They've just been really busy. They got some new releases coming out. They got big things happening there. And I've heard from a couple of sources that given the lockdown, model sales are actually up, which makes sense since people are stuck at home for something to do. And apparently, if you want to believe some of the folks that are in the business, I don't mean up just a little. I've heard some pretty impressive numbers. One person swagged 40%, and I don't know if that's true or not, but that's certainly interesting. And then did make a little forward progress on the Jolly Green. Got the first coat of paint on it, of the actual color. So today I'm hoping to get to work on it and letting it sit overnight. Today I hope to get work on the shell and working on the Stuka and the little Stuka Ito. And so I was impressed. When did I get the thing uploaded? 1 or 2 in the morning or something. And I'd go and do something and come back and has a couple of hundred hits. I didn't appreciate, even to this day, how big slot cars still are. They're, which, think about it, I guess it makes perfect sense, but, when you read the books, oh, it's a fad. You go to a lot of places, you don't really see them for sale in hobby shops and stuff, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And you realize, no, a lot of people are still into them in a huge way. They're still in production and stuff, and that was just a reminder of how much, I don't know. So, anyway, the Saturn V is still sitting on the table, hasn't been touched, and it actually doesn't look that hard. That complex a kit, it's the painting, and when you paint a Saturn V, a lot of folks don't realize no two Saturn Vs were identical. Every one of them was different. Partly from improvements, partly for mission-specific reasons. Some of them were actually very different. They were all built on the same basic, I think they were all the same height and built on the same basic frame and everything. But they were getting payload up, improving the engines. Just because they got it to work, they didn't stop developing it. The second stage J2 engines were what were later modified to be the space shuttle engines, if I remember correctly. And those F1s, the big ones on the bottom, biggest rocket engine ever made to this day, put out like 1.5 million pounds of thrust each. But I think over time, through constant evolution, the second stage engines were able to get up pretty close to that. I don't know if they ever made it to 1.5 million pounds, but so when you build your Saturn V, you have to decide, which one do I want to make it? So that I don't think they were identically marked, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at that in a while, but it's kind of sad to see somebody put so much work into one and turn out that the photos they were used to were of a different one. And it's really more of a rivet counting thing. I'm not really a rivet counter, but but for a perfectionist, that's got to be maddening. Because I heard a story one time about a model contest, and it was kind of sad. Apparently, the model builder had made this beautiful Navy helicopter, and I think it was an S3, but anyway, or H3, the Sea King. And until this caffeine gets in my memory circuits, like, that does not compute. The memory banks are old and rusted, Captain. It was so long ago. So there's a Star Trek misquote. So anyway, back to back to the story. The helicopter was just immaculate. I mean, not literally. According to people, it's just not a flaw. You couldn't do a better job. No seams on the windows, anything. And he got second place, and everybody was flabbergasted. How did he get second place? One of the judges said, well, the antenna array had a mistake in it. You put down this is this helicopter at this squadron at this point in history, because it gets that specific a show now. This is March '63 or whatever, and squadron this, and he said, well, how do you know that sort of the antenna's right? And of course, the guy's got his instruction sheet and his reference photos. He goes, yeah, well, the time you picked, they didn't have that antenna on there because they hadn't installed that equipment yet. And he's like, well, what do you mean? How do you know that? He goes, apparently the judge like, well, I was the commander of that squadron during that time, and it turned out the guy was now a retired Navy admiral who had commanded that squadron at that time. And I was like, man, that's pretty hardcore. A little hard to enjoy things when it gets that. So, well, I shouldn't say that. But for some people, I'm sure that's exactly what they enjoy. That brings up an interesting point. Model building is different things to different people. You have your perfectionists, and this isn't criticism. God bless them. You have at it, man. You do you. But I enjoy making a nice looking model so it looks good on the shelf. But I've tried to stay a little bit relaxed about it. I have tried to get extremely accurate with a few models and detail them out because I was in a mood to do it. But then I'll build 2 or 3 or 4 models. I just want it to look kind of like it does on the box top or in the artwork. I want it to sit on the shelf and look pretty. Obviously, you don't want to color outside the lines. But then you got some folks that they just want to build. Shoot the thing with some folks don't even paint them, but shoot a paint scheme on the thing, but they just want to build. They don't want to file. They just it's the construction. And they're like, well, my models aren't that good. And I'm I have to disagree. If you enjoyed building it, it did what it was supposed to do, then yeah, it's good. That's what it's for. If you're seeking to make a perfect looking thing, that's fine. That's great. You want to challenge yourself, but by all means, keep it fun. So anyway, that's about all I got for today. Here's today's question for you. And this is kind of a tricky one because hopefully building models is fun. By the way, some of you guys with the I said, what's the biggest boo-boo you've made? You're not the only one that's done self-surgery with an X-Acto knife for what it's worth. So we're in the, what we should call it, the Styrene Blood Club, the Styrene Bleeders. But here's a question for the day. What is like the kit you've built that just you had the most fun with it? It just made you giggle, And I was like, maybe even years later you'd look at it and but they're just working on it. It was just fun. And anyway, guys, that's my cup of Joe. We'll see everybody later. there.